Welcome to Aptitude for Placements, and my name is Ranjit. I have conducted this aptitude training program at various engineering colleges all over India, and every year thousands of students get placed by attending this aptitude training program. Here you will find all the questions that are commonly encountered in most of the aptitude tests. These are the questions that keep on repeating in many of these tests. So just familiarize yourself with all these questions and you will have a clear advantage when you attempt your actual placement test. Let's start. Let us start with the topic permutations and combinations. Now coming to permutations and combinations, basically only one type of question will be there. That is, some activity will be done or some experiment will be done and you will be asked to find out the number of possible outcomes. That is, how many outcomes are possible. Typically some chairs are there and some children are to be seated in these chairs. So how many seating arrangements are possible? So basically how many outcomes are possible? Or maybe you have some points. How many triangles are possible? Or another typical question will be some 100 people are there. How many cricket teams of 11 can be selected from 100 people? So this is the type of question that comes. Now fundamental to the study of such questions, you have something called as the fundamental principle of counting. Now there are two parts to the fundamental principle of counting. So let us look at the first part first. So we look at the first half of the fundamental principle of counting. What it says is that one experiment needs to be done. Now for that one experiment, let us say there are m possible outcomes. M possible outcomes means before you do the experiment itself, just try to find out how many outcomes can be there. For example, if you toss a coin, you can have either head or tail, two possible outcomes. Similarly, for this one experiment, if you do it, you will get 1 out of m different possible outcomes. Now, there's another experiment. If you do it, there are n different possible outcomes. Now, you are going to do both the experiments. For this one experiment, m different possible outcomes are there. For this experiment, n possible outcomes are there. And you are going to do both the experiments, this and this. Then total number of outcomes is given as m into n. That is this and this. Whenever and comes, you have to multiply. That will get you the total number of outcomes. Let us take an example. Let us say for one experiment, there are 3 possible outcomes. And for another experiment, let us say there are 2 possible outcomes. Now you are going to do both the experiments. Then totally how many outcomes are possible? This and this. Whenever and comes, you have to multiply. So 3 into 2, altogether 6 possible outcomes are there. Now, or you can write it down and count also. Now, when you do the first one, there are 3 possible outcomes. Assume that these are the 3 possible outcomes. And when you do the second one, for each of these 3, second one, 2 possible outcomes are there. So, altogether 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, 6 possible outcomes are there. So, you can count like this, or directly you can apply the fundamental principle of counting. 3 outcomes for this, 2 outcomes for this and this. Whenever and comes, you have to multiply. So 3 into 2, 6. This is the first half of the fundamental principle of counting. Now we will look at the second part. What it says is that for one experiment, if you do it, there are m different possible outcomes. Now there's another experiment. If you do it, there are n possible outcomes for that experiment. Now you cannot do both the experiments. Both this and this you cannot do. Either this or this. Only one experiment can be done. Then what is the total number of outcomes? Total number of outcomes is given as m plus n. That is either this or this. Whenever or comes, you have to add. So total number of outcomes will be m plus n. Let us say for one experiment, 3 possible outcomes are there. And for another experiment, 2 possible outcomes are there. Either you do this experiment or you do this experiment. Then total number of outcomes will be 3 plus 2, 5. That is depending upon which experiment you choose. If you choose this experiment, you will get one of these 3 possible outcomes. If you choose this experiment, you will get one of these two possible outcomes. So depending upon which experiment you choose, you will get one of these three or one of these two. So total number of outcomes will be 3 plus 2, 5. Now generally when you get questions under permutations and combinations, generally you will have a large number of experiments. So find out the number of outcomes for each given experiment, and all the experiments are to be done. It's like that and that and that and that. All the experiments are to be done. Then you have to multiply. That will get you the total number of outcomes. Now among the many experiments, only one experiment can be done. Then you have to add. That will get you the total number of outcomes. Now these permutations and combinations formulas, these formulas are used to calculate the number of outcomes for any given experiment, especially the combinations formula. These formulas will give you the number of outcomes for any given experiment. So use the formula, get the number of outcomes for each given experiment, and it's like that and that and that. All the experiments are to be done. Then you multiply. That will get you the total number of outcomes. Now out of the given experiments, only one experiment can be done. It's like that or that or that. Whenever or comes, you should add. That will get you the total number of outcomes. Now in some questions, the experiments themselves will be quite simple. So in such questions, there is no need to use the permutations and combinations formula. So some questions, the experiments themselves will be very simple. So you can just use your own intelligence and find out the number of outcomes, possible outcomes for the experiment, and then you can proceed with the fundamental principle of counting. So in some questions, formulas are not necessary. It can be done directly using your own intelligence alone and the fundamental principle of counting. So let us look at a typical question which can be done using your own intelligence. Now let us say you have two numbers 1 and 2. You need to form a 2-digit number where repetition of the digits is allowed. So how many 2-digit numbers are possible, or generally how many outcomes are possible? So initially we'll just write down the possible 2-digit numbers where repetition of the digits is allowed. 1 is 11, then you can have 1 and 2 12, 2 and 1 21, you can have 2 and 2 22. So altogether 4 outcomes are possible. These are the 4 2-digit numbers. Using the fundamental principle of counting, this blank can be either 1 or 2. Two possible outcomes are there. This blank also either 1 or 2 possible outcomes. Now in this case, both the blanks have to be filled, this and this, because if you fill any one blank alone, you will not get a 2-digit number. To get a 2-digit number, both the blanks have to be filled, this and this. Then total number of outcomes will be 2 into 2, 4. That is 2 outcomes for this blank, 2 outcomes for this blank, this and this. So 2 into 2, 4 possible outcomes. Now these kind of intelligence based questions, they are also important. Formula based questions are also equally important. Now right now we will start with these kind of intelligence based questions. Later we will look at formula based questions. Now both the types of questions are equally important. So right now we will start with intelligence based questions, and there's no need of any particular formula. So don't think about any formula now. So formula based questions will come later, and I'll clearly explain those formulas at that time. So right now just use your intelligence alone and the fundamental principle of counting, and you will get the answer. Let us start now. Let me briefly explain how to prepare for your aptitude test. First of all, you need to familiarize yourself with all the questions that have been worked out here. These are the questions that keep on repeating in many of the aptitude tests. After that, you need to attempt practice tests. According to me, you need to attempt at least 10 practice tests before your actual placement test. Here, I will be giving you 10 practice tests. And these practice tests will be ideal for you to improve your test scores. The 10 practice tests are available at a cost of only Rs 200. So all that you need to do is make a payment of Rs 200, either through Google Pay or through Phone Pay or through Paytm, and you will receive the 10 practice tests. The details of the payment comes next.